What's going on, everybody? I'm Johnny Brook. Welcome back to another Crafted Workshop video. And this week's video is a little bit different, and that's because it's the first video on this channel that's not hosted by me. Zach Hendrickson, who you might know from his channel, The Cutting Board, is going to be our first contributing creator. Basically, that means that he's going to be putting out one video a month on this channel. They're all going to be very similar stylistically, nice modern projects, good voiceover, all that kind of stuff. So if you like my videos, you should definitely like his videos on this channel. And basically, it's just going to help me put out more content. The other nice thing is Zach has a little bit of a more basic shop, so it's great for all you guys who have been wanting those more kind of simple tool builds. So hopefully you guys enjoy. I really think you are. This first project is a great one. It's a plywood sliding barn door. And without further ado, let's go ahead and send it over to Zach.
What's going on, guys? My name is Zach Hendrickson. I'm the newest member of the Crafted Workshop team, and today I'd like to take you through how I built this sliding barn door from a couple of sheets of maple plywood. Let's get started. So the entire build for this project was built from 2 sheets of furniture grade maple plywood. Now, I tried working the cut list a few different ways, but ultimately needed an extra sheet for some of the cuts. I started by ripping my sheets of plywood on the table saw, which can be a little tricky by yourself. The door is 34.5 inches wide, so I first cut away 13.5 inches of material to give me the base of the door. I then used the leftover material to rip 3-inch strips that would make out the outer edges of the door and the center dividers. The last thing to rip were the X's, and those were about 1.25 inches wide, and I ripped enough to have a few backups in case I messed up later on. Doing this X pattern that I settled on is what ultimately caused this project to require the extra sheet, and is what really takes the most time in building this particular barn door style. I then used my rip cut to cut the door to its final height, and I am in desperate need of a new saw blade because my saw really struggled with this single cut. The next thing to do was the glue up. I lined up everything as square as possible using a big drywall square, applied and spread out a bead of glue, and then used 1-inch pin nails to hold everything in place while it dried. In all of my projects, I've begun doing my glue ups and cuts in phases, making sure my first round of cuts are perfect and then tacking things in place. That way, when I went to do the next round of cuts and glue ups, in this case the vertical edge pieces, I can make a series of cuts and sneak up on their final length so everything fits perfectly, and it's really made a difference in upping the overall quality of the projects that I've been working on. While I do this middle round of gluing, let me take a minute to talk about this video's sponsor, Arrow Fastener. Arrow makes a wide variety of fastening tools, including staple guns, nailers, glue guns, riveters, and more. I used the Arrow PT23 pneumatic pin nailer for this entire build, as well as their 1-inch pin nails, and I have a bunch of projects featuring Arrow tools in the works, including some exclusive projects going up on the Arrow site, so stay tuned. If you'd like to learn more about Arrow tools and its fasteners, check out the link in the video description, and thank you again to Arrow for sponsoring this video. Now, like I said, the most complicated part of this build was undoubtedly the X design of it. I needed to make 6 of these to fill the gaps, so I'd line up the piece in its exact location, then mark the piece and head over to the miter saw to cut it out roughly to size. Then take it back to the door to check how close it was to the final size, and then use the disc sander and some 80 grit paper to remove smaller increments of material until I hit the final size. Then it was really just rinse and repeat for the other 2 pieces that form the X, and then repeating the same process for each section. Then, much like the other trim, I'd lay down a bead of glue and use pin nails to hold things in place. And I know that some people might not like it, but in this case, I really like the look of the exposed plywood. Because it's such high quality material, that really helped accentuate the overall design rather than taking away from it. The next day, after everything had cured, I used some 80 grit paper to knock off the sharp edges slightly ahead of finishing, and just use some compressed air to clean off the dust. So I ended up using a pre-stain conditioner for this build. I really hadn't stained plywood to this capacity before, so I was unsure of how a finish would look on it. I ended up using the conditioner on a scrap piece of wood to test, and it looked good, so I proceeded. The door was actually really tough to stain. The inside corners of those X's were so small and sharp that I ended up needing to borrow a makeup foam brush to get stain into those corners. The last thing to do was add a rabbet at the bottom of the door. This would be so that the door could travel on this little track that is included with most barn door kits, and doing this will ultimately prevent the door from swinging too far off the wall when you slide it. So I'm using some matte black barn door hardware that I got from Amazon. We wanted a wagon wheel look, and this set was about $85, which seemed like a good deal. I marked out the location for the holes based on the directions and drilled them out, and then used a combination of an impact driver and a wrench to tighten everything and make sure it was square. To hang the doors, I'm using what I think is called a caul, which is just another 3-inch strip of plywood stained the same color as the door, and this would get screwed directly into the studs of my wall so that the hardware itself, which comes with pre-drilled holes that might not necessarily match your stud pattern, could be hung more easily into that piece of wood rather than having to figure out a way to make it go directly into your studs. To install the rail, we put the barn door up on a 3/4 inch sheet of plywood and then marked the area where the door would hang on the wheels. And doing it in this way gives room at the bottom of the door to roll but allows you to accurately mount it. Once all 5 bolts were anchored to the wall, we could put the door on the track. The door kit came with these awesome little stops on each side that could be adjusted to sit wherever you wanted on each side so that you could perfectly control the overall travel of your door. Once it was on the track, I installed these small safety pieces so the door couldn't be bumped off the track. They're off center like this, and I think it's so that you can screw them in at a 90-degree angle and then rotate to go directly under the railing. The final piece was to add the small door track. I just marked where I wanted to go on the floor and used a drill to attach it. So thank you so much for watching this video. I had a great time building this. I think it came out great. I think it really adds character to my kitchen. And overall, I'm just super happy with how it came out. If this is your first time to the channel, we would love it if you would subscribe to both the Crafted Workshop channel as well as my channel, The Cutting Board. And if you guys have any questions about any of the tools that we used, including links to the arrow tool specifically that we use, you should definitely check out those links in the description. If you haven't already, make sure you also hit that bell. That way you're notified anytime that we post a new video. And we also encourage you to check out the new YouTube sponsor feature that we have started doing on this channel. That really helps us out and allows us to keep making content that you guys love. So thank you so much again for watching, and until next time, happy making.